Did you know that ancient Egypt lasted for over 3,000 years as an organized civilization? Yeah, 3,000. That's longer than every single modern country has existed, combined, multiplied by your attention span when someone says, history class. While most empires collapse faster than your New Year's resolutions, Egypt just kept going. Dynasties rose, fell, rose again, fell harder. And through it all, the Egyptians were like, yeah, sure, let's just build another pyramid, that'll fix it. Imagine living in a civilization so old that when it started, people were barely figuring out how to farm. And when it ended, Rome was already doing influencer collabs with Cleopatra. The entire timeline of ancient Egypt makes most countries look like weekend projects. So how did a bunch of people living next to a really moody river manage to keep their civilization going for 3 millennia? Buckle up, because this story has everything. Gods with animal heads, sibling marriages, massive stone triangles, and enough eyeliner to make a goth band jealous. Let's rewind all the way back to around 3100 BCE. That's when King Narmer, or Menes, because historians can't even agree on ancient names, decided to unite Upper and Lower Egypt. Yeah, Egypt was basically two rival startups before Narmer came in and did a corporate merger. He slapped on a fancy crown that combined both kingdoms and declared himself CEO of the Nile. From there, Egypt exploded into innovation. They invented hieroglyphs, basically the world's first emoji language. You could write an entire story just using birds, eyes, and squiggly lines. They built temples, developed irrigation, and figured out that the Nile's yearly floods could be used to grow crops. So while everyone else was still running around with sticks and fire, Egyptians had a functioning economy, architecture, religion, and probably a few early tax collectors ruining everyone's day. Then came the Old Kingdom, from around 2700 to 2200 BCE, aka the Pyramid Era. This was the golden age of, I'm so rich, I'll build something that will confuse aliens for centuries. Pharaoh Djoser kicked things off with the first step pyramid, designed by Imhotep, the OG genius who was basically a doctor, architect, and scientist all in one. And then came Pharaoh Khufu, who looked at that and said, cute, but what if mine was bigger? And boom, the Great Pyramid of Giza was born. It's one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and it's the only one still standing. Think about that. Thousands of years, and it's still here. Meanwhile, modern buildings can't even survive a heavy rain. The Great Pyramid was built using over 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing several tons. No cranes, no forklifts, no power tools, just thousands of workers, sweat, and a very can-do attitude. Some say aliens helped, others say human determination. Personally, I think it was just a combination of caffeine and fear of being fired. Permanently. But every golden age has to end. The Old Kingdom eventually collapsed, mostly because the Nile stopped flooding properly, leading to famine. Turns out when your entire society relies on one river, Mother Nature can really ruin your day. Add in corrupt officials and some internal chaos, and Egypt went into its first big dark era, known as the First Intermediate Period, or as I like to call it, the Great Egyptian Recession. But Egyptians weren't quitters. Around 2050 BCE, a new pharaoh, Mentuhotep II, came along and said, all right, everyone chill, we're putting the band back together. That started the Middle Kingdom, Egypt's comeback tour. They expanded trade, built forts, and got their art and culture game back on point. For a while, things were actually going great, until some neighbors called the Hyksos showed up. The Hyksos invaded Egypt with horses and chariots, and the Egyptians were like, wait, what are those? See, Egypt had never seen horses before. The Hyksos basically rolled in with ancient tanks while Egypt was still fighting on foot. It wasn't a fair fight. The Hyksos took over, and Egypt was stuck in yet another under new management phase. But the Egyptians learned fast. They copied the chariot technology, trained up an army, and eventually kicked the Hyksos out. That led to the start of the new kingdom, the era of peak Egypt. This was the time of massive temples, powerful pharaohs, and so much gold that Tutankhamun's tomb still blinds archaeologists. Speaking of pharaohs, let's talk about Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's most successful rulers and, plot twist, a woman. She ruled for 2 decades, launched major trade expeditions, and built some of the most beautiful temples ever. But after she died, her successor tried to erase her from history, literally chiseling her name off monuments. Because even 3,000 years ago, men couldn't handle a woman doing a better job. Then there was Akhenaten, the pharaoh who decided to reinvent religion. He ditched Egypt's entire pantheon of gods and said, "Actually, we're worshipping one god now, the sun disk, Aten." You can imagine how that went. Imagine waking up one day and someone telling you, "Forget everything you know about your religion. We're doing solar power now." People were not thrilled. Akhenaten even changed the capital city and made weirdly realistic art of himself. Potbelly, long face, the works. It was the first time in history someone said, "I don't care if it's flattering, make it honest." After Akhenaten's death, Egypt collectively went, "Okay, never mind. That was weird," and switched back to their old gods. His son, Tutankhamun, yes, that King Tut, restored the traditional religion, ruled for a few years, and then died mysteriously as a teenager. He wasn't a particularly great pharaoh, but when archaeologists discovered his tomb in 1922, full of treasures, he became the posthumous celebrity of the ancient world. Basically, King Tut became famous for being famous, the Kardashians of pharaohs. Then came Ramses II, the king of kings, the man who loved himself more than his entire kingdom. He ruled for 66 years, built temples the size of shopping malls, and had his name carved on literally everything. If Ramses had Instagram, every post would be a selfie captioned, "Ye are blessed, ni and pharaoh life." He even signed the world's first peace treaty with the Hittites after decades of fighting, proving that even ancient rulers eventually get tired of war paperwork. But after Ramses' reign, things started to go downhill again. The economy tanked, invasions kept happening, and pharaohs got weaker. The once great empire turned into a target for every foreign power with an army. First came the Libyans, then the Nubians, then the Assyrians, then the Persians. Basically, Egypt became the neighborhood everyone wanted to conquer. And then, in 332 BCE, Alexander the Great strolled in and said, "Mine now." The Greeks took over, and Egypt became part of the Hellenistic world. That's when Cleopatra entered the chat. The last queen of Egypt, fluent in multiple languages, cunning, charismatic, and dramatic enough to make Shakespeare write about her centuries later. She allied with Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony, trying to keep Egypt independent while Rome loomed like the world's most powerful. Eventually, it all fell apart. Antony and Cleopatra lost to Octavian, and Cleopatra chose to end her life by letting a venomous snake bite her. Because apparently, in ancient times, that was the preferred way to say, "I'm out." With Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE, Egypt officially became a Roman province. The longest-running civilization in human history was over. Think about that. 3,000 years of history, art, religion, and innovation. They invented paper, papyrus, locks, makeup, toothpaste, calendars, and probably the first overcomplicated bureaucracy. They influenced Greece, Rome, and the rest of the world for millennia. To put it in perspective, from the birth of Jesus to now, only about 2,000 years have passed. Egypt lasted 1,000 years longer than that. That's like if the United States were still around in the year 5025, and people were still worshipping George Washington as a sun god. The story of ancient Egypt isn't just about pyramids and mummies. It's about resilience, a civilization that reinvented itself again and again, surviving disasters, invasions, and insane rulers with god complexes. It's proof that humanity can achieve incredible things, especially when there's enough sand, sun, and divine ego to fuel it. So next time you think 10 years is a long time, remember, ancient Egypt lasted 3,000. Empires came and went, languages changed, gods rose and fell. But the Egyptians? They just kept going. And honestly, if their civilization survived that long without Wi-Fi, maybe they really were gods. If you enjoyed this trip down the Nile of history, hit the like button, subscribe for more ancient chaos, and drop a comment. Which ancient civilization do you think would have had the worst TikTok trend? Because if Ramses II had access to filters, humanity would still be recovering from it.